This video is intended only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, just a couple of things I want to say before we begin the video. First of all, I want to say trigger warning. This story has a couple of sensitive topics, including SA and death of a child and violence. So if those things bother you, please just come back next time. I just wanted to make sure everybody feels comfortable. Yeah, also, the 4th of July is my birthday, so this is very exciting that I have a story coming out for that. And yes, other than that, I am working on being more consistent. I know I said I was going to be, and life has just gotten in the way, but I'm here now, and that's all that matters, and thank you all for sticking by me and being patient with me. Anyway, I hope you enjoy your 4th of July if you live in America. If not, I hope you just enjoy this story, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Stay creepy. It was like any other 4th of July at the beach. The night was clear, the stars were out, and the moon was a fourth full. The beach was dark, only lit by the sporadic fire pits and campfires, coupled with people's phones and, of course, the fireworks. With each flash, the beach became another color. The black ocean became a colored mirror. Kids were playing and running with sparklers and toys. Teens were drinking and smoking. Adults were cooking and enjoying their family lives. Music of all sorts played, mostly country or hip-hop and R&B. It differed with each group or couple. Normally, the beach would be lit by the condos and hotels on the beach and by the piers, but it was tradition to turn the lights off for the fireworks to have the full effect. Tents of all sizes covered the beach, joined with chairs, coolers, mobile barbecue pits, as there were not enough fire pits for everyone at the beach. The parking was 100 yards from the beach with very strict security. Both hotel security and a couple of officers would patrol for drunk drivers and drug dealers, as well as more serious crimes. A woman walked all alone along the beach that night until she noticed 2 men were following her. She picked up her pace when the 2 drunk men ran past her laughing and pushing each other as they raced one another. She relaxed and slowed down, letting her guard down. She caught up to them as they had stopped to catch their drunk breath. She looked at them at the same time a firework went off, and they grabbed her. The fireworks muted her initial scream until they covered her mouth themselves. She fought it, but it was too late for her to land an effective blow, for the second man who had circled around her quickly pinned her arms behind her back. She bit his hand and tried to scream, but the other man punched her in the stomach, taking the wind out of her. The second man then kicked her knee out from under her, taking her to the sand and pinning her down. They laughed, celebrating their success, and finished with a burp. The one that still stood took a beer from his swim trunks pocket. The man on top of her put his hands in between her legs as she squirmed to get free, but his weight was too much for her. She tried to lift her head to scream for help, but the one standing stepped on her head, burying it in the sand. The same one poured the rest of his beer onto her head after taking a refreshing sip. Her eyes burned from the beer.
"Keep her fucking head down or this'll be over,"
the one on top of her cursed quietly but aggressively.
"So what? There'll be more girls." "Yeah, but none like her are stupid enough to come this far from everyone else. Besides, we spent half the night picking her out. How am I supposed to get this bitch to suck me off then? Fine, but you can't let her scream. Won't be a problem."
The man began to pull down his trunks.
"Wait, I got it."
The man on top of her pressed his weight down onto her so she couldn't move and could barely breathe at all. To her horror, the hot, disgusting breath from the man on top of her entered her nostrils and combed to the back of her neck. She couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but close her eyes and wait until it was over or pray that someone else would notice. A firework went off, then suddenly the weight and smelly breath were gone, only to be replaced by something warm and wet all over her backside. The man in front of her pulled a knife and charged at someone behind her, stepping on her in the process. She heard only the sounds of bones cracking and the tearing of flesh as the drunk cried out,
What the fuck?"
Those last words were drowned out by a gargle. A firework went off, followed by a thud, then only the sound of waves. She wiped the sand off her face the best she could to get it out of her eyes. She looked to see who her savior was. A very still, tall, unusually shaped black figure standing before her, with the two now torn apart attackers at his feet. Are you going to hurt me now? She asked, wiping away more sand from her face, after she stood up to properly face her savior. He didn't speak, didn't move, but she could feel his stare. Still in shock, now confused, she remembered the small flashlight in her pocket and stuffed her hand in her pocket to get it. Her savior finally moved just a little, making a strange noise. It's okay. It's not pepper spray or a taser or anything. She wanted to say more, but she stopped, her instinct of fear filling her body again as she slowly pulled out her flashlight. Every fiber in her body told her not to turn it on and just run, but she couldn't help it. She wanted to, needed to know why, so she turned it on. Revealing her savior, she wanted to scream, but the shock of the reality before her was too petrifying. The sound of footsteps and flashlights got closer and closer. It turned out someone did hear her initial scream, and now 4 college kids, armed with flashlights and their fists, came to her rescue. They found her. Her back was to them, and by her body language and shaking body, she was still too petrified to move.
Are you okay, miss?
One of them asked gently before they ran their light up and down her body, checking to see if she was hurt.
Hey, what happened?
One of them asked impatiently.
What the hell is wrong with you, dude? What? Look at her. She's scared out of her mind, you asshole.
The said asshole lowered his flashlight to look at the rest of her again, but stopped at the sand at her feet. There was blood. A lot of blood. A knife and a crushed beer can.
What the fuck?
The others said collectively as they backed away.
Miss, it's okay. We're here to help.
The one that seemed to be the leader said softly as he slowly made his way around to face her. He hesitantly but gently tapped her shoulder.
Miss? She's not scared or in shock. She's just some drugged up bitch who's just tripping and probably cut herself. Shut the hell up!
The leader grabbed her shoulder gently and turned her to face them, only to see that her bottom jaw, cheeks, and nose were missing, and her eyes were bloodshot. Her tongue dangled freely, and she had deep gashes across her neck and face that gushed blood with every breath she took. Before they could scream, they were taken into the black abyss without a sound or fight. Across the beach, everyone was looking up in awe at the fireworks, enjoying the beauty, taking in their freedom and good fortune, all blind to the hell that was about to befall them, and all they had to do was look down at the black abyss to see what hid within. First, it was a boy on a pier with his slightly older sister. Their parents were just off the pier barbecuing. The boy's sparkler died out, and something else caught his eye as a firework went off. He went further down the pier, transfixed on the illuminated abyss and beach. He saw 1, 5, 20, 50, 100 before the world was surrendered to darkness after the light of the firework faded. Now interested in seeing more of whatever it was that he was staring at, he kept his gaze, and then the black sands before him were lit again. What was 100 were then a number he didn't know, for his limited knowledge would not allow such a thing. But even so, what his eyes saw was an army of black figures that were now closer than before, and that they stretched all along the beach as far as he could see. They were blanketed in darkness once more, and when the white light from 4 fireworks went off at the same time, the boy, so transfixed on the beach, failed to notice what was right in front of him. The boy's throat was torn out before he was violently pulled into the abyss. His sister, who had stayed where their parents could see them, tried to run to their parents after hearing the screams, but her back was shredded open, revealing her spine to those behind her. The children's parents couldn't even react before the father's eyeline was gouged out by a webbed-clawed hand. His jaw was torn from its proper place. His arms he used to try to fight back were torn off. The mother had the top of her head, bone and all, torn away by a precise and powerful tear. Her stomach was ripped out. Her legs she used to fight back were ripped off, one at the knee and then the other entirely. In seconds, every other family, couple, and group of friends that were right on the water met the same fate. The army from the abyss moved through the darkness as best they could, only to be seen through the illumination from the fireworks and fire pits. They killed all with no hesitation or discrimination, slicing open stomachs and backs, tearing limbs and clothes, ripping children and lovers apart. Those lucky, quick, and selfish enough made haste into the hotels. Some managed to make it into the elevators first. Others, smart enough, took the stairs. No thought could be defined as to why they chose to do what they did next. But whatever floor they chose, they broke into any room they could and barricaded themselves. Others across the beach managed to get into their condo or any condo and barricaded themselves in. The rest didn't even seem to be able to comprehend the idea to get in their cars, that's if they even had their keys on them, let alone even comprehend the ability or possibility to just run past the cars and try to get to the rest of civilization, which was only a mile away. While those that weren't lucky enough to think to run for shelter wildly ran anywhere in flashing darkness, with each new illumination revealing a new petrifying horror around them. Screaming and crying and bumping into each other, tripping over or bumping into their attackers, tripping in the sand, tripping or running into beach chairs, coolers, doused barbecue pits, or tripping on corpses, or more specifically, what was left of them. In an instant, the world around them became completely illuminated. The finale of fireworks had begun. The sound being so close drowned out the sounds of screams of victims and screeches and roars of their attackers from the abyss. All those still alive and unharmed were doomed to face the insurmountable level of fear of being face to face or surrounded by beings of myth that were now a living, breathing, killing reality. They couldn't move, they couldn't scream, they couldn't even utter a word. Without remorse or hesitation, the creatures pounced. In minutes, there was no longer any sand, only bloody sludge with endless amounts of limbs, intestines, and bone, with more and more evisceration that littered the beach by the second. Before the people on the pier could even do anything, all those that were leaning on the railing were either pulled off their feet and over the railing or pulled in between the bars of the railing. Their screams were short-lived, replaced by the sounds of their bones snapping like twigs. It was at this attack that the people on the 4 piers came to the horrifying realization that their own pier was covered in the army of the Black Abyss. Those lucky enough to not be next to the metal railings ran back down the pier. Left and right, people were taken or tripped by the unknown force that reached or lunged out. But there were those that were still lucky enough to get further down, and just as the end of the arched piers came into sight, the unknown force burst from beneath, stopping them in their tracks. At the same time, a trio of large red, white, and blue fireworks went off. The light illuminated the creatures to reveal that the unknown force could only be described as the gill men. Black and navy blue slimy skin, lean but toned bodies, unnaturally long arms, hunched backs with spiked fins along their spine, webbed and clawed hands, big, round, pitch-black eyes, serrated rows of double-layered teeth, and a wide jaw like a shark. They stood there in their horrifying glory as they stood up straight, being illuminated by more light. They didn't make any more movements apart from that. However, they seemed to be smiling and even make noises that indicated laughter. As if waiting for a signal, the gillmen attacked at the screams of horrified humans, creating an ungodly chorus. They butchered and eviscerated any and every human in their path as they forced them back to the end of the pier. Webbed, clawed hands sliced through flesh, brain, and bone, silencing every scream and cry one by one, with some of them staying behind to feast on their kill. Many more crawled up the pillars that held up each pier to join in on the feast of slaughter. Some stole kills of others by taking them into the ocean. While more joined in on the feasting of the fresh kills, they stripped every body bare before dismembering them and eating them piece by piece. Blood filled into the waters below, running down the pillars of the pier or through the cracks of the wood panels. Yet sharks dare not come near, nor any natural sea life for that matter. Even to this day, none have returned. The owner of a bar located on the 3rd pier and his bartenders fought back with a shotgun and a handful of pistols and revolvers and a metal bat. They had saved as many people as they could and quickly tried to barricade the windows and front door. They made every shot count, giving others time to make Molotov cocktails, while other men grabbed pool sticks and attacked a group of gillmen that managed to get through on the right side. Their sticks broke after a handful of hits, but this did not deter the brave men. They immediately used what was left of their sticks to stab any gillmen they could, giving them a taste of their own medicine. They managed to stop the gillmen's advance, only then for more gillmen to break in on the left side. Even so, those closest joined by the other brave men met the gillmen with chairs and broken bottles. One by one the brave men fell, then the women. The bartenders with guns used the last of their ammo to stop what was left of the gillmen's second advance. With nothing left, the bartenders gathered what they could and threw themselves on the barricades. The owner of the bar, now ready with more than enough Molotov cocktails, looked at his bartenders and his best friend since childhood.
Do it!
They shouted in unison. In one hand he lit a lighter, the other a Molotov.
Fucking do it, Hank!
They shouted again.
Take as many as we can, right, boys?
The gillmen broke through the front and right side barricades, falling over one another and the chairs and the tables. The alcohol-covered chairs and tables.
Always.
With tears in his eyes and a guilt-ridden heart, he threw the first cocktail at his friends that were already covered in alcohol from the spilt or broken bottles and glasses. From there, the rest of the bar ignited. The owner ran to the back of the bar where the kitchen was and turned on the gas stove and waited. All the gillmen inside were engulfed by the explosion. Their screeches of agony were ear-splitting, trapped in by the quickly collapsing bar. Some managed to make it back to the then red abyss by jumping back out the windows. Most didn't and collapsed on the deck against the railing, which created a collective anger throughout the ranks of the gillmen, and they screeched as one before advancing further inland. Very few people finally made it to their cars or into the parking lot, and those that did were killed on the spot or dragged away back to the beach. There was a mother and her 2 children that were smart enough to hide in the bed of a raised truck. She covered their mouths and held them in her arms as close as she could. Sadly, prayers couldn't hide the scent of her husband's blood on her, nor the smell of her and her children's piss. 3 gillmen surrounded them. They slowly crept up to the bed of the truck. Fortunately, her children died in her arms by suffocation as she intended. She didn't scream and didn't cry. She only asked God and her husband for forgiveness for what she had done to their children. The hotels and condos were now being broken into and were covered in gillmen climbing the building and smashing through window after window. Each room sounded off with screams as they broke into each room. An employee only managed to get in a single word on their 911 call, but not before they managed to turn on the power for the beach floodlights, which only brought more despair to those still alive in the upper floor hotel rooms, and people who never left their hotel room and watched the fireworks from inside. They saw hundreds, if not 1,000, of these gillmen covering the beach and piers like ants. They saw an explosion on the middle pier and it collapsed soon after. The other piers, one after the other, were swallowed by the red abyss. Room after room, house after house were broken into and people hiding were slaughtered. A few condo owners got to their firearms and managed to get a couple shots off before being disemboweled. Everything from the white and gray carpets to the white or tan ceilings was now red. Every last surface was drenched and dripping with blood. Although the pets weren't spared, they weren't eaten or torn apart. They were only found with broken necks. The last people to put up a fight were the firework technicians, but all they managed to do was ignite what they hadn't used, barely wounding any gillman. With everyone dead or in pieces, the fireworks gone, the 1,000 gillmen feasted in peace. Each minute that passed, the last whimpers and cries were silenced, leaving only the sound of flesh being torn, bones breaking, clothes being torn, the chomping of jaws and smacking of lips. As the bodies ran out, so did the sounds they brought, and everything became silenced by the waves. The birds were gone. The insects dare not to make a sound. The radio speakers and floodlights had all been destroyed. With the food gone, the gillmen collected their dead and wounded and disappeared into the black abyss as silently and quietly as they had risen from it. When the sun rose the next day, the agents of the covert agency known as DARK, that were deployed to investigate, only found a red sanded beach line as far as the eye could see, and for a mile out in the ocean, there was just red. Not a single body or any piece of one was found. Only several large piles of all the bloody, shredded clothes, empty and full beer cans, coolers, barbecue pits, beach chairs, plastic or paper plates, food wrappers, and cooked or uncooked food. Later, it was reported by the president himself, joined by the leader of DARK, that every beach and coastal town along both the west and east coast of America's mainland, Hawaii and Alaska, Canada, Mexico, South America, the UK, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, and Asia, all met the same fate. That day, humanity was attacked. The truth of our world was revealed, and the country, the world, would never be the same.